Peter Ramsey, Rodney Rothman. You directed Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse along with Bob Persichetti. Now you come from slightly different backgrounds in film and TV. So how did you become involved in this film?
Great question. Yeah. I became involved in this film mainly because of a previous relationship. I'd worked on a number of things with Phil Lord and Chris Miller before, as a writer, and as a friend. I just had a number of successful collaborations with them, and I also just plainly like their style, and I like their ambition. I like the kinds of things they go for. I've always gravitated towards working with them when I could, because I know it's going to be interesting. So there was a point, relatively early in the process of this film where I came in to help with the script, and then shortly after that, I came in as a co-director along with Peter and Bob.
And in my case, Bob Persichetti was the first one to actually come on as director, and he had given me a call and asked me if I could help him out, do some storyboarding. And a few months later, the scope, I think, of the job, the scale of it, kind of started becoming a lot clearer. And everybody realized, boy, we could use some help on the directing end. So they asked me to join in with Bob as a second director, and then Rodney said pretty soon after that we were three.
And it's Peter, it's your second feature film as a director. You also directed Rise of the Guardians, and Rodney, this is your first feature film as a director. What's it like coming into a project this kind of elaborate and complicated and ambitious, this early on?
Yeah, all those words apply. I mean, it was one of those things where the train was just starting to leave the station, I think, when I came on, and nobody was quite sure how to get to the destination just yet. So a lot of the key ideas about the look and the tone were already sort of there. And Phil had written this really clear, really great treatment that really set the tone for the entire project, and that became our North Star. So as crazy as things got, and as many elements, story-wise and personnel-wise were involved, we always had that target to move toward, and I think that's the thing that kept it from being like a complete chaotic disaster, as close as it got sometimes.
Yeah. It was really exciting to come on board the project. Even in the early stages, when there was a lot to figure out still. I remember sitting with Justin Thompson, the production designer, and he showed me some early, biz dev or looks at, some early material to sort of convey some of the ambition of the project visually, and I was really blown away by it and excited, and I've been looking for an opportunity like that for a long time, and trying to create opportunities like that for myself for a long time, and it wasn't just the visuals, although those were really exciting. I also read Phil's first draft, and within 30 pages, really understood that the project was aiming to go for something ambitious with a pretty high degree of difficulty, and it was just it just seemed like a really exciting challenge. So I wanted to be invited into the club. I had to kind of play it cool, but I wanted to get invited on board to help, because this project had so many things that I've been wanting to see projects at times.
And what's it like collaborating between like three directors, and then also you have the producers? Is that a very smooth collaboration, or is it complicated to try and coordinate so many people's like different approaches or visions?
It's kind of a mix of the two. I mean, again, we really did have a clear target with Phil's initial treatment and initial drafts of the script. The issue was, how do we boil down all the embarrassment of riches that was in that initial way too long script to something we could actually do. And I think as far as how we manage the multiple directors and whatnot, it actually turned into a really organic kind of thing, because we our strengths are probably centered in different areas, Bob, Rodney, and I, but we overlap in a lot of areas too. So, in animation, a lot of the phases of production are going on at the same time. You're animating, you're still writing, you're storyboarding, you're doing camera, you're working with the art department, you're recording actors. So on any given day, any one of us would bounce around to take care of one of those aspects of the production while the others were kind of, pushing forward on whatever they were doing. So it was a thing where we'd kind of go put out the fires as needed, but we were always, we'd always get back together in editorial and touch base and debate and argue and figure out the next steps forward. And, Phil as producer was always kind of cracking the whip to get, go wilder, go crazier, have you taken this as far as you can? Is this as expressive enough of our story and characters as it could be? So he was always kind of this German Shepherd keeping us moving in the right direction.
Yeah. I mean, I would say people have a lot of preconceptions, I guess, about what, how a movie can or should be directed or what the leadership team should look like. This movie did not play by some of those preconceptions.
Right.
It needed the team that we had, and then everyone involved needed to be, respectful and collaborative and do everything they could to put the movie first. But when we watch the movie now, we see the whole team in the movie, and not just Phil and Chris and the directors. We see our production designer and our VFX supervisor and our animation supervisor and all the hundreds of people that work for them. Everyone contributed, and somehow it ended up feeling unified. And to some extent, we don't even understand why. Yeah. That's how the project worked. That's what the project needed. And, I will say the project wasn't very forgiving. There wasn't a lot of room for ego because the project wasn't very forgiving. If an idea wasn't right, it was painful. So, you couldn't really cling to your ideas because it was so plainly obvious that they weren't working. So that engenders, I think, a production-wide attitude of just let's just figure out what's the right move for this movie, and it doesn't matter where the idea comes from, and all hands on deck basically.
Now, the film brings together a number of different Spider-Man characters from different Spider-Man comics, and kind of brings them into this one world centered around the Miles Morales character. What was it like, bringing all of those kind of disparate elements together? Those different characters have different tones and different styles visually and kind of emotionally. What was it like trying to kind of coordinate all that into one whole?
It was, there were a lot of challenges, but the thing we ended up always gravitating toward was, how does this help us tell Miles' story? How are we experiencing all these guys through Miles's point of view? What do they mean to him? What do they mean to his story? Are they a contrast to him? Are they similar to him? Is there empathy there? And it was kind of a way of making what could seem like a liability, that you've got all these crazy things happening in every direction, none of them are alike, and make that a strength, which is folding it back into one of the themes of our story, which is anyone can wear the mask. And there's like an inherent message of diversity and acceptance and finding strength and commonality in your difference that's baked into the fabric of the movie in a bunch of different ways.
Yeah, commonality was a key theme that developed over the course. These characters that look and act so different from one another, looking at each other and saying, "You're like me." That became a recurring motif in the movie, and all of that stuff for us goes back to Miles and telling Miles' story. At least the way we view the movie, it's like all these disparate characters are kind of expressions or foils for Miles, and help us tell his story in as expressive a way as possible. That was, we realized eventually that the more we did that, the better it seemed to work, and the more the elements blended.
Whenever I see a film with a lot of action that's animated, whether it's this film or Incredibles or How to Train Your Dragon, any number of films, I'm always struck by how well suited animation is to sort of action movies, and we don't see it quite that often. There's like such a freedom of movement in a film like this. You know, do you think that animation is especially well suited to the superhero genre in a way that we get something that we don't necessarily get from a live action version?
Yeah, I do, and it's kind of it's so interesting that it's it's an anomaly that there's a big feature animated superhero movie. I think probably because the genre has always been seen as Saturday morning cartoons. I think people have just been educated to look at them that way, and it's totally understandable. But it is kind of odd that feature animation kind of got left out of the chain, and the Marvel comics, for example, went straight to live action feature films, and it's kind of like, oh, yeah, that's interesting, because we had people telling us, yeah, feature animation superheroes, it's not the best fit. Marvel does it well, right, and well, and it's sort of like, wait a minute, really? These things came out of comics. So it was always kind of odd, but I think it's another one of those things. Once upon a time, nobody thought the Marvel movies were going to be all that successful, because who wants to see live action superheroes running around, and who can you mean this character might show up in that movie? What kind of stupid idea is that? So it's just, there's always preconceived notions whenever you step a little bit out of the comfort zone.
Yeah, I think generally, or broadly, there were a couple ideas that inspired us in regards to what you're talking about. One is that animation, for us and for a lot of people is a medium. It's not a genre. And another thought is that animation. A great thing about animated film is that it doesn't have to look real; it only has to feel real. And the way you make it feel real, you can really push the boundaries of what it looks like, the way the characters behave, all kinds of, narratively, you can push all kinds of boundaries. And as long as it feels real to the audience, then they emotionally engage. That's such a cool idea for us, and that guided us in some of our, riskier decisions. It was all about, well, this makes me lean in more the way we're doing this. Making this choice makes me lean in more towards the movie. So it makes me lean in more towards Miles. So that's a good thing. So hopefully the audience is down for that, The only other thing that I'm thinking, and Bob Persichetti's not here, but something that he really talked a lot about, over production was, obviously this is a movie inspired by comics, but it's not just inspired by comics, how they look. It's kind of inspired by how it feels to read comics, and how comic books or sequential art communicates story and emotion. So we this is a movie that was very focused on strong compositions and strong poses for the characters that that we stick on for longer. Usually for a CG film, we were animated on 2s, not 1s. That means that poses were held for longer. So we really favored striking compositions, striking poses, one image that can really tell the story. And that's something that animation theoretically can do, in a much more bold way.
Yeah, animation, I think, allowed us to access the expressive side of comics in a way that live action, live action gives you the spectacle of what comics can do, and that's great. But animation, we're able to show you the hand of the artist, and we're able to show you how comics, the way that comics exaggerate or emphasize things that's expressive of the story that one artist is trying to tell.
And what was it like assembling this voice cast? A lot of times you'll see these big names in an animated film, and you watch the animated film, you can hear the star. But here it feels like the actors very much inhabit these roles in a way where you don't think about who's voicing them as much.
Yeah, we just had great actors that were committed, and I think the parts were well written enough so that they could really see the meat that was there in the roles, and that relationships between the characters and the spine of each character's story. I think all that stuff was clear enough that they were able to really dig in and bring something real, you know. And then, you know, you have an actor like Jake Johnson, who is the writer and just a super creative thinker in his own right. Sort of, you know, in our records, we have the freedom to embellish and kind of ad lib and really build on what's there on the page. And you know, somebody like Jake really rises to the challenge. And then, you know, someone like Shamik, who we cast because of everybody we heard, he was the one who brought the most truth and vulnerability and openness to his interpretation of Miles. And it was just about, you know, setting up situations where Shamik could like be free and connect with the reality of the story. And I think so much of it was just there on the page and in the conception that all of our cast, you know, Brian and Mahershala, Luna, you know, Lily, Catherine, everyone was they're just so good. You give them good material and it's just like a Ferrari going down the track.
Yeah, and the animators would then pick up, you know, take the baton and craft, you know, really subtle performances around these vocal tracks. You know, that informed the writing process a lot. Once we saw that the more naturalistically we wrote the dialogue and the more naturalistically we recorded the dialogue, the more the animators were able to find all kinds of things in their their animated performance, you know, that were being said but not being said, and we were really impressed by that. So we pushed into that a lot.
And you know, it's such a visually interesting film and a unique film. What was the hardest part about, you know, just animating, you know, the visual style of this? Like, was there any particular scene or any particular moment that was especially difficult to execute?
I think they all had their challenges, believe me, and you know, the biggest challenge was figuring out the look and how to execute it in the first place, which pretty much took us our first year and a half of production, because nobody had any idea how to do any of this stuff, you know, even once we figured out what we wanted to do. But our production designer, Justin Thompson, our head of character animation, Josh Beveridge, our VFX supervisor, Danny Dimian, from ImageWorks. These guys, they're such brilliant craftsmen and artists and leaders of their teams that they were able to pull this off. You know, all the new software, new code that had to be written, all the you know, the technical challenges of doing the kind of animation we wanted to do, and a production pipeline that wasn't prepared to do it. So all these things, you know, we had an amazing team of people helping us out. So whatever challenges we had, and we threw them a lot of challenges, they were able to kind of say, yeah, that's impossible, but give us a couple of days and we'll figure something out.
Yeah.
And yeah, and then you come out, you know, all that culminates in something like our final scenes, taking, you know, that are pretty out there. And that was the culmination of all of that hard work and all those decisions.
Yeah.
And the you know, even before the film is officially released, it's already gotten so much positive attention from critics. It's won a few critics awards already for best animated film, which is not something you would necessarily expect for a superhero film. You know, even though, I mean, we are seeing that kind of, you know, with films like Black Panther and the live action universe kind of getting more of that recognition. What were you expecting, or were you expecting anything from how it would be received, and what has it been like getting those, you know, notices that have been so overwhelmingly positive?
I mean, it's head spinning. You know, nobody, you know, I would say that nobody took a job on this movie thinking I'm going to win an award,
right,
or be up for an award for this. But that said, everyone took a job on this movie, you know, feeling really excited and nervous and scared, and, you know, and feeling, you know, that they were being allowed an opportunity to try something that they've been hungry for. There was a lot of real artistic conviction behind the movie, and not just about the visuals, but about the story we were telling, about the character. We loved Miles. We loved, we were really excited by, by what we started to get back, when we were in reviews, and and that emboldened us to push even further. So, so it's really, having been worked on a lot of things and having been in a lot of situations, it's really strange and gratifying to work on something that everyone was so keyed into, and then to have a bunch of people out there say and appreciate all the things that you secretly appreciated about the thing you were working on. It doesn't always happen like that, So, some of the things that, some of the things that some people have said, like, it's like what I scripted in my brain at 3 a.m. when I was like pacing around the office. You know what I mean? So we're just trying to enjoy that. We're happy because we love our movie, and we believe we could, like, we believe we belong there, but nobody expected it. And we're just trying to enjoy it and soak it in, because it was not guaranteed.
It's very, for me, it's very similar to a lot of what I went through on Rise of the Guardians, my last movie. There were, a bunch of aspects of that where we were really trying to push against a lot of animation constraints at the time, and it was the same thing. People were very passionate, and people were like, fully on board with the mission. And it's great to be part of something where I get to kind of do the same thing, only on probably an even bigger scale, I think, and a kind of even like wilder than that was. But just to be able to try something new, I mean, I think that's what all of us really got excited by.
Well, I want to congratulate you on the film, and on best of luck on its release. It's off to a good start. So thank you so much for talking to me today.
It's a pleasure, man. Thank you.
Great to meet you.